The 1990s was one of the best decades for animated television shows based off of comic books. There's a lot of great stuff all within that decade, and there are three that always stand out to me that I really enjoyed and still enjoy, even as an adult. One is definitely the 90s Batman animated series that is incredible and one of the best iterations of Batman ever. Even to this day, it's one of the best, if not the best. It's just so well made. And then you had the 90s X-Men series, which that theme song is stuck in the head of any kid who grew up in the 90s. Just a fantastic version of the X-Men, and that's what I think of when I think of them. But the one I liked even more than X-Men on a related note was one that would air either right before or right after, depending on your time zone, what was going on with the scheduling, was the 90s Marvel Spider-Man series. I actually liked that even more than the X-Men. And I think one of the reasons why was the storytelling. I do like Spider-Man in general, but with that version, the storytelling was very different, and it was a series that focused on very long narratives. It was a series that had many multi-part episodes that even the ones that were shorter would be somehow referenced or intertwined with later sagas, and it would just be a show that would really drag you in because it was not necessarily as episodic as a lot of its counterparts. And I think that's what really drew me in, and the tone was very different from, say, the counterpart, the 90s X-Men. It was a little less action heavy many times. It was a little more inner dialogue of Spider-Man of Peter Parker, a lot more slow-paced episodes that in some cases had some genuinely decent drama, even for something that was geared towards mostly kids. It really had some really well done drama that was still good and still going to evoke emotion as an adult watching back. So a really great television series. And sadly though, with that, it's a different case if you live in Europe, but in North America, that Spider-Man series was never released in full on DVD. In Europe, there is a big box set, for PAL territories, and it's crazy expensive now because it's the only one out there for the whole series. But in the U.S., I was able to, over the years, finding them at thrift stores and things like that, piece together the U.S. DVD releases. This series was released on VHS, many different episodes, and I mean there are even some very rare Singapore exclusive laserdiscs out there. So there are some releases here and there, but like something like Captain Planet, it just never got a wide release on DVD. Instead, we got these DVD releases, which are cool. It's great to have some, but they are lacking because of the narrative structure of the show. Like I had said before, these all have a collection of episodes with a certain theme. You have the Venom Saga, Spider-Man vs. Doc Ock, Daredevil, Return of the Green Goblin, and the Ultimate Villain Showdown. I love having these because I enjoy the series. I'm glad there's some of it on DVD, but the problem with these is because even though they focus on a certain character, that character might have come and gone in different story arcs. You might have, you'll put in a DVD, and the first episode that pops up says, like, Sins of the Father Part 14, and you're like, okay, and then you get a couple episodes, and then you get a whole new saga for the last episode featuring that character and the theme or whatever. I think the Venom one is pretty well inclusive for that individual Venom saga, for that individual little episode arc, but in general, the series was laid out in such a way that it had many multi-episode, complicated arcs that would come and go from a main story point and kind of build it up to something towards the end of that saga that it was in, and different characters would again come and go during that. And so you get this sort of very choppy narrative. If you're not familiar with the show already, if you don't really remember it, there are great episodes that you can watch standalone, but they're very obviously building off episodes that came before it and leading into episodes that will come later. It's very obvious in just about every episode that it's not, even though it can have a standalone seeming story, there are threads of that are not. They're connected to other things. It really is a web of storytelling. And but that's the issue with these releases. They're great. I'm very happy to have them. But the problem is, again, the story structure of the show doesn't lend itself to that type of thing. And I'm really hoping that it will get releases. It's Disney Plus has Spider-Man now on there, but as far as the physical DVD releases, you have to find that one now very expensive PAL box set if you want the whole thing and be able to play DVDs from that region. So yeah, it's just weird how a show that is that popular of a property, and even this individual iteration was very popular at the time, how that can just kind of get shafted on on DVD, on physical media. And it's just one of those shows that really can tell you, along with Captain Planet I mentioned again, something always comes up, how just because something is incredibly commonplace and popular in its day, something very mainstream, it doesn't mean that it's going to always be around. If it's taken off streaming services, then your only choice to get the whole thing would be that one DVD box set. Otherwise, you're stuck with bits and pieces, and we're lucky we have this, so I'm very happy these exist. But yeah, it's just disappointing that something that good does not have quality releases that are widely available throughout the world. But this is the collection of what has been released in North America, and these are still fantastic on their own. If you find them, grab them. It's a great TV series from the 90s. It's probably my favorite version of Spider-Man, of the character, even in movies and different comics and whatever. First thing I think of when I think of Spider-Man is this series. Same thing with the X-Men. The first thing I think of is the 90s cartoon, and the same thing with Batman. I mean, there were just so much iconic animation based off of comic books released within that one decade. It was something that was definitely a golden age for that type of show. And if you do like that kind of stuff, one that's not based off of a comic but has a very similar feel, especially compared to Batman the Animated Series, and really fits in with these types of shows, make sure you check out Disney's Gargoyles. If you like, you watch some of these, maybe you're watching a Disney Plus or whatever, some Spider-Man, X-Men, you've seen there's been lots of new releases, Blu-ray and whatever, of the 90s Batman Animated Series. If you like those and you haven't seen it, check out Disney's Gargoyles, because that is amazing. One of the best animated shows of that decade.